Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and today I'm here with Kaitlin Wierzbach and Behr, both consultants from here at Core. Glad you both could join us.
Happy to be here.
Glad to be here.
So glad to have you both. Now, this will be the first in a two-part series on quality culture, with this week being how ISO impacts organizational culture. But before we dig into that, let's first learn a little bit about our guest, Kate and Kaitlin. And we'll start with Kate. Could you share a little bit about your journey and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a consultant here at Core. I've worked in regulated industries for a little bit over a decade.
Okay.
I spent most of my time in the biopharmaceutical industry, in operations management and quality management, leading a variety of different team sizes and different types of people.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here. I know this is your first time on the podcast, and I'm excited to hear your knowledge and hear some of your experience. Kaitlin, you're not a newbie here. You've been on for multiple times over the last 2.5 years. So you want to share a little bit about yourself as well for those who might not know?
Yeah, so certainly. I've been implementing and also complying to ISO 9001 as well as several other standards since approximately 2018, so about 7 years now. I've been with Core for a little over 2.5 years. My expertise originates in manufacturing, particularly with dietary supplements. But since joining Core and starting on my consulting journey, I've collaborated with a diverse range of companies, spanning with both services and product sectors now.
Awesome. That's great. Well, it's funny you should mention it. I just had my 7th anniversary of being full-time at Core 2 days ago. So it's been a long journey, but I've really enjoyed it. Love it.
That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, let's start with getting into our first topic. We're talking about how ISO impacts your organizational culture. So we're dealing with quality culture. And the first question is going to be for Kaitlin. How does implementing ISO 9001 typically affect the culture of an organization?
Yeah, implementing 9001 can really shape how a company operates. It'll definitely push everyone to focus more on quality and continuous improvement, which is great for looking at a proactive mindset among all of the employees.
Okay.
It also can improve communication between your teams since everyone has a more clear understanding of the high-level processes and responsibilities within the organization.
Okay.
There's also a much stronger emphasis on meeting your customers' needs, which can actually shift the whole culture towards being more customer-centric and focusing on what you're providing the customer.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, but of course, it's obviously not always smooth sailing. Sometimes there's resistance to change. We're humans. We're all resistant to a little bit of change.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Especially when people can see a new standard and new requirements as extra work. It can take some time for everyone to see the benefits and get used to the new way of doing things. So leadership definitely plays a really big role in the implementation process and making sure that everyone stays motivated and on board with what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but overall, if it's done right, especially with that leadership commitment, involving all of your employees and making sure your communication is really clear, it can absolutely transform how people work together, which can in turn make your organization more efficient and also focused on delivering quality results.
All right. Well, that's great, Kaitlin. Now, Kate, are there any common patterns or shifts that you've noticed when somebody starts to implement this ISO 9001 into the culture?
Yeah, of course. I've seen several common patterns and cultural shifts that take place as organizations go through the implementation process. Okay. Like Kaitlin mentioned, starting out, it's really common to encounter resistance and some skepticism. Mm-hmm. Employees might see it as extra paperwork or extra work or feel like it's just another compliance hurdle to jump over. Okay. But leadership and quality teams need to communicate why this is happening, why the implementation is happening, what's in it for employees, customers, and the organization as a whole.
Okay.
As the implementation process moves forward, people usually start to recognize the value of structured processes. Employees begin to see how their roles can fit into the bigger picture and how standardization can make their jobs easier, actually not harder.
Okay.
This is a key shift when people understand that ISO 9001 isn't about bureaucracy, but about making processes more efficient and predictable.
Okay.
Possibly the most rewarding shift is when continuous improvement becomes part of the company culture itself. Employees start looking for ways to refine processes, reduce waste, improve efficiency, and make their jobs easier, not just because it's required, but because they see value in it. The organization can move from a compliance mindset to an improvement mindset.
That's so true. I know we've had Suzanne Weber-Smotko talk about that in the past, where it really does change from, oh, there's things we got to do to, hey, how is this going to improve? And the more that you get people to buy into that, the better it generally works out.
Exactly.
For sure.
Now, Kaitlin, in what ways does ISO 9001 influence that employee engagement we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, the standard can actually have a really big impact on employee engagement, usually for the better if it's implemented well.
Yep.
One, because ISO takes on a process approach. So it will involve usually all of the employees in improving your processes and finding solutions, which can make them feel more valued and connected to the organization's overall goals and targets.
Okay.
Typically, when people see how their roles directly impact the quality and the customer satisfaction as well, it can give them a real sense of purpose in their day-to-day job responsibilities.
I can see that.
Yeah, it definitely also pushes for better communication. One of the requirements of 9001 is that it requires clear documentation and defined processes. So really everybody knows what's expected of them and how their work will fit into that bigger picture. So the employees can get a lot more clarity, which can reduce their frustration and help the employees focus on doing their best work.
So sometimes really having them see the bigger picture and how they fit into it like a puzzle. Hey, I'm actually a valuable piece here.
Because a lot of employees are doing, similar responsibilities day in and day out. So seeing how their small piece can fit into that bigger picture definitely helps them stay more motivated. And another thing that ISO really pushes is training and skill development through your employees. They're all about improvement. So if organizations invest in improving their employee skills during the implementation, it improves their performance, but it also shows that the company cares about their growth, whether that growth be within their specific role within the company or just their career as a whole. If the employees are seeing benefits that they personally get out of implementing the standard, that'll help them support implementing the standard and support the goals of the company.
I know here where we can really take time that we need to train and get better at our jobs, and that's going to overall improve the company and the business and how you're dealing with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. They really want, at Core specifically, too, they like well-rounded employees. I know I've been presented myself with opportunities to learn new standards or, take training videos and work with other consultants and really grow your knowledge. So that's a really good bonus of that quality culture of 9001.
Now, is there anything bad or any challenges that you found?
Yeah, there definitely can be challenges. Obviously, resistance that we've already talked about is a big one, or maybe feeling overwhelmed by the changes. So it's really important that leadership can involve their employees early on, listen to their input, recognize their effort that they're putting in, and really focus on enhancing engagement. As we talked about, people tend to feel more invested when they see their contributions driving those meaningful improvements. So trying to combat those challenges and just involve your employees in a lot of the steps along the way.
Okay. Well, it certainly is very easy to see how communication is key to all this, and also for people to see their place in the quality management system. Now, Kate, how critical is the role of leadership in fostering a culture that embraces the principles of ISO?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think leadership is the driving force behind fostering a culture that truly embraces the principles of ISO 9001.
Okay.
When we talk about quality management systems, we're not just discussing a set of procedures or audits. We're talking about an organizational mindset. And that organizational mindset needs to prioritize customer satisfaction, continuous improvement, and a process-driven approach to excellence. It's really the name of the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Leadership can definitely bridge the gap between what is important to the customers and what's important to the employees, because I think they have a really good idea of both of their needs.
So they're like you said, the bridge in between.
Exactly. They're the bridge, they're the glue, they're the pilot of the plane.
Gotcha.
The standard places a huge emphasis on leadership for a reason. There's a whole clause just for leadership commitment. And if leadership treats implementing ISO 9001 as a box-ticking exercise, that's exactly how the rest of the company is going to see it.
Yeah.
If leadership champions quality, if they actively engage in setting clear objectives, ensuring adequate resources, and fostering a culture of accountability, then the standard becomes more than just a certificate. It becomes a way of operating.
Yep. And that's really what you want. That's going to give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to being certified with ISO 9001.
Exactly. But since employees take their cues from leadership, if a CEO or a plant manager genuinely believes in the value of a well-implemented QMS, They'll reinforce it in their decision-making, their communication, and their actions.
Absolutely.
They'll support training initiatives, recognize employees who contribute to quality improvement, and create an environment where feedback is welcomed rather than feared, which is so important.
Yeah, there's nothing like saying, I really have a good idea here, or we have a problem here, but I ain't going to say anything.
That's a big one.
Exactly.
Yeah. Getting feedback, good and bad, from your employees is really important.
Yeah,
exactly.
And also the one where as a leader, don't always be like, oh, well, why don't you handle it? Or, well, now that you brought it up, why don't you take the lead on that? It's like, that's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted to bring it up.
We just needed to solve the problem. Exactly.
Exactly.
When leadership embraces the standard and its benefits, quality stops just being a requirement and starts becoming a really competitive advantage between yourselves and your customers.
Yep, leadership really needs to know that. It's so true. Leadership really does set the tone.
Exactly.
So, Kaitlin, we talked about it a little bit, but how does this focus or alter the communication and also the daily behaviors or attitudes of employees?
Yeah, that emphasis on the quality management can really reshape how the employees communicate on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
For one, it definitely encourages more structured and intentional communication. When you have your documented processes and responsibilities, employees know what they should be communicating back and forth. There's more clear lines of what your tasks are.
Mm-hmm.
So they tend to communicate more precisely, whether it's sharing updates, reporting issues, or collaborating with other teams to problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
It shifts that focus into a more streamlined communication.
Okay.
Your attitudes, just in general, of the employees can also shift once they start seeing the audits and the checks and the feedback, kind of what Kate was saying, as not as criticisms, but as opportunities to learn and improve.
Mm-hmm.
The mindset can really change, which is key to fostering that culture of continuous improvement. So the confidence to give feedback and see that if something's wrong, it's how can we improve on this, not as a ding to themselves as an employee. They're more likely to speak up about inefficiencies or potential risks because 9001 values problem solving.
Right. Well, and I guess that's another side that we didn't look at when I was saying about how you don't want to bring something up because you don't want to be assigned to it or whatever. There's a phrase that I learned in one of my jobs. It's called having change in your pocket. And I kind of went that, and I was like, what does that mean? And like, well, there's trust. So if you know that your manager is going to listen to your concerns and take actions on it, you'd also need to be receptive to, there might need to be some communication about what needs to be done better, altered, or we're changing this process and those types of things.
Right. But it can just, ISO in general will kind of change even just the tone of those conversations of rather like that finger pointing of this is wrong and that's wrong. It's that culture of how can we improve on this? And I really think it changed from a reactive culture of like, this went wrong and now we react to it, to kind of a proactive, your employees get in the habit of seeing an issue before it becomes an issue and bringing that up to leadership. But it obviously takes time to build that kind of structure. So if employees feel that the system is rigid or punitive, it can obviously create resistance, which we talk a lot about, which we don't want.
Right.
But when you focus really on collaboration, clear expectation, and celebrate any kind of progress within the company, it can lead to a more quality-focused team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, Kate, what are the most significant benefits and challenges of aligning an organizational culture with 9001 standards?
Yeah, so aligning the culture with the 9001 standard, obviously major benefits, but there's going to be some challenges that you have to expect.
Yep.
If we're talking about benefits, starting with the bright side first, on the plus side, it strengthens customer focus, it improves efficiency, and reduces waste. Employees become more engaged because quality becomes everyone's responsibility, not just the quality department.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Decision-making can become more data-driven, reducing guesswork and improving risk management. And when a company truly embraces ISO 9001, it gains a reputation for reliability, which gives it the competitive edge.
Right.
But there is some challenges to expect.
Yep.
Resistance to change is common. People are used to their way of doing things, and change it's scary. It's scary for everybody. Some companies fall into the trap of treating the standard as just a compliance checkbox, as I mentioned, rather than a continuous improvement tool.
Right.
But leadership commitment that we talked about earlier is so crucial. Leaders really need to model the right behaviors. If they don't, the culture isn't going to shift. You have to make sure that there's consistency across departments. That can be tough, especially in larger organizations.
Yeah.
One big mistake would be overcomplicating processes with excessive documentation, turning ISO 9001 into a bureaucratic burden instead of a tool for efficiency.
Yeah, we talked about that on the podcast mid last year, I think, where, how do you bring down those processes, streamline them, and have the documentation you need, not just document everything.
Yeah, I think CORE does a great job at that by, one of our principles being to simplify everything. We're not encouraging activities that are not a value add.
Right. And they're not leading to the ultimate goal, which is continual improvement.
Continual improvement and customer satisfaction. So I think the key to success is really making ISO 9001 part of how the business operates, not just something you do for an audit.
Right. Not just something to check the box, but really building that culture where 9001 helps create engagement. It creates communication. It really helps you tighten up your processes, get them more in line, make them more effective, a little more lean, and overall give better customer quality and customer satisfaction.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, this has really been insightful. I appreciate you both being here. I know you're going to be here next week too. But before you get out of here, does anybody have any last points they want to make about this?
Yeah, I think just in general, one of the most important takeaways is that we really need that leadership buy-in. It's going to start from the top and trickle down to your employees. And just really employee involvement is really successful to implement and embrace the overall quality culture. You want it to be part of just the feeling when you walk in to whatever company you're working with, that you're focused on quality, you're focused on the customers, and you're free to bring any issues or any improvements to whoever that may be in the company.
Yeah, and I think also if you can personalize that communication too, like, my goodness, that can really show leadership taking that involvement that they need to engage with the employees. So it's not just middle management down to, or the manager that's above the person doing the job. Try to make it as much as you can across the different levels there.
Exactly, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, through this conversation today, it's really apparent that the people that do the work have the answers, and it's really important to involve them in the initiative to implement the standard and to continue to maintain your QMS over time. Without their input, you're going to lose a lot of valuable insight into what your customers are feeling and thinking and what they need, and what other people in the organization are thinking and feeling and what they need. And if you can really find the right way to bring that all together, I think you're going to have a QMS that kind of just starts to run itself after some time.
Yeah. A lot of times people look at the communication and they look at it from manufacturing. Well, the people that are down on the floor are the ones building things and they know how they work. That's absolutely true. From a service side, if you're the one that's directly dealing with a customer, let's say you're a call in a place that's dealing with customer service for software, and everybody knows this bug exists, and they get constant calls about this bug, but nobody addresses the bug.
Exactly.
How is that, not showing up? Clearly nobody cares about this,
Right.
Or at least give a communication. We know we were dealing with, it's just a really complex problem, and we're trying to massage it versus just like, I don't know.
Exactly.
Well, again, this has been a great talk today. I want to thank you both for being part of the conversation. Really appreciate you walking us through this part one of quality culture. Next week, we're going to have part two, and we're actually going to talk about employee satisfaction, which we touched on a little bit about today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yes. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next week. And we want to thank everyone who's listened to our podcast today. We hope it's been informative for you. Now, if you're looking for more information about Core Business Solutions and how we can help you with ISO certification, cybersecurity, or even customized training, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit our website at www.thecoresolution.com. And if you haven't already followed us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, be sure to do so, and that way you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's released next week. Have a great day, everyone.